What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show live. Today is January 16th, 2026. It's a Friday. And for some people, maybe in the US, they'll have a 3-day weekend due to the Martin Luther King holiday on Monday. I know I do, so I'm excited about that. It is also very cold here in Tampa, so the cold has made its way down to where I am, and it's a very chilly 42. It was actually 36 this morning, and if you live in this part of the world, well, that's cold. That is our winter. It's here. It's as cold as it's going to probably be, but
it was, by contrast, yesterday here in SoCal, Northern California, it was 78 degrees.
Nice. Yeah, we were there a weekend ago. We're not there right now. I was sitting outside. Literally, I told the story about that the whole musical thing on Tuesday, and but I was literally sitting out at an outside cafe with my wife on Saturday, and now I mean. There'll be none of that. It's too cold out. So anyway, Andy is here. Beth is here. I'm Brian. We don't need to talk about the weather. You guys can find out the weather in your local area. That's not what we're here for. We are here to talk about AI news and some other topics that honestly we just didn't get to yesterday. Beth and I were both talking about. So with that said, and welcome to everybody in the comments. Let's get into the news. And I don't know, I feel like I'm like, oh, this is the thing I'm talking about. And then somehow it takes away the show. So Andy, Beth, who wants to start with the news today? Cause I definitely feel like it shouldn't be me this week or now.
All right. I'll go with a little tidbit here. McKinsey is a major, a strategic consulting firm for enterprises. And a year and a half ago, they had 3,000 AI agents operating. So they had built, in the early stages of AI agent development, while 40,000 employees were using those, some of them were using those 3,000 agents, but that's the ratio, was 40,000 humans and 3,000 AI agents. And now, 18 months later, the number of agents has grown to 20,000 AI agents. And, of course, McKinsey, like many other companies, are using AI agents in a way that does reduce the requirement for additional humans. But there's an interesting twist to what's happened in their hiring process. And that is now they have an internal kind of collective agent that's called Lily. And they've been developing this for many years. And so it's a kind of a supportive strategic consultant, AI co-pilot, if you will. And what they're doing in their interview process now for new consultants, and McKinsey hires people out of the top business schools, right? That's where you come from. And, of course, business schools take candidates from liberal arts programs and also from engineering programs. So there would be computer science majors who also go to business school in order to develop the skills, not the schools that they need in order to, be able to become entrepreneurs or to be assistive in the development of new systems and products inside those companies that they join. Well, anyway, now they're focusing on the ability of those users to work with Lily, to work in a collaborative way with their AI agents. And so in that interview process that's managed by another external company that contributed to this article in Fortune that I am referencing here, in that interview process, they have to prompt the AI, the Lily AI, review its output and apply judgment to produce a clear and structured response. And what they're finding, this company, the external company, Case Basics, is the one that's doing this evaluation of those candidates. It says they're testing for soft skills essential to work at the consulting firm, and they are now seeking more liberal arts majors whom they had deprioritized. Why? Because those people show better skill in both the sort of collaborative process of interacting with an agent and also in creativity, which they think is going to be creative solution development is going to be the next stage of how the optimization of this collaboration between AI agents and human players is going to evolve. So, and it's not just McKinsey that's doing this kind of thing. There's another CEO of an IT firm that's referenced in the article called Cognizant Technology Solutions, and the CEO there said that he's recruiting candidates with liberal arts degrees in preference over the other disciplines because of the expansive and more, let's say, the broadening that's made available by the liberal arts program. And as a liberal arts major myself, I can see that. It doesn't prevent you as a liberal arts major from learning technical capabilities, but those are being supplanted. The need for those in the individuals being supplanted by AI.
Mm-hmm. Actually, alumna from Hollins University was a college when I went, but the liberal arts emphasis there was very broad, but also very much on writing, being able to communicate your thoughts in a written form. So let your babies go to liberal arts schools and take improv classes. It'll pay off.
I still believe in that. I still think that's the right answer there, is take improv classes because of the ability for the communication, obviously, right, Beth? I mean, your communication skills are, even if you didn't do that, would be, if you had liberal arts, would be well suited for interacting with AI, giving instructions. Even now, the things we see with Claude Code, I know we talked about it. We said that a lot this week, but the idea of giving instructions and handing that off, as opposed to that more intimate, like line by line prompting that perhaps we had to do a little bit more of a year or definitely 2 years ago, that seems to not be as big of a deal. And then you layer on the improv and your ability to think on your feet and think fast and think dynamically to what's going on around you with no knowledge of what, you don't know what the next person's going to say. Ideally, I mean, you might have a hint, but I mean, it's a lot of yes and, as you say. So I think I agree 100%. Now, my question is, will this actually correlate or not correlate? Will this actually translate to net new jobs places? We're saying this. I agree with it. It sounds like y'all agree with this, but are we actually seeing any budge in the hiring where somebody is posting on LinkedIn or something like that, or X or something, and saying, hey, I have a liberal arts degree, but I was just hired to do this thing because they actually think I'm really the best person for this communication side of what they're doing with AI or whatever. Like, are we seeing any indicators of managers or hiring people, HR, doing this actually?
This is the first indication I've seen of it, and I think it's interesting because McKinsey has a very disciplined hiring process.
They do.
It's a good big win for a person to get on board with McKinsey, and it's a good
and honestly, don't you think it being McKinsey, it might influence more managers and HRs, because a lot of people know McKinsey. They know their reports. They know what they put out.
They read the same article I did and decide that an English major has some value here.
But also, I think where we'll see this show up actually is just in who doesn't automatically get eliminated, or a shift in who automatically gets eliminated, because you're still going to hire based on the interview to a certain extent, right? That you have to at some point be someone who can engage with a human and prove that through a human interview. But it's lovely that, like, hey, this was my concentration of my liberal arts degree. Doesn't immediately didn't go to tech school, sorry, right? Like, or whatever that is.
Oh, I mean, even me, I have a general degree. I have a Bachelor of Science from UGA. Now, I have my master's degree is in executive fire service leadership. I typically leave the fire off now because it's not very relevant to, I'm not still working in the fire space or fire industry. So I usually leave that off and just say it's executive leadership, which is fair. I wrote all papers in that. And that was, I did better with that, Beth. I did better when I could communicate. Now, it was like, Perla, and it was all the restraints, and oh my God, my wife used to read every single paper I did and fix all my passive verbs to active verbs, which has just been something I've dealt with my whole life. But truthfully, I was just saying this to somebody else. I prompt AI and tell it to give me active verbs over passive verbs. And I'll throw that trick out to anybody. If anybody wants slightly better results with your writing, if you're like me I feel like old Dave Letterman. Hey kids, if you're like me, and like he used to do that on the show, he would drop his voice down and be like, "Hey kids, if you're like me and you get annoyed with not just the delves and M dashes, but largely, what's that? Oh yeah, Karl's here, by the way.
Karl's calling you. Yeah.
If you don't like the, beyond the M dashes and the delves, which we've all talked about, the thing that bothers me the most right now, and it's across models, it's not like a pick on one or the other, is it's like it's not. This isn't just about topic, comma. It's bigger than that, or it's what enter whatever you want after that, right? Drives me nuts when I do my first passes for the newsletter, which I will be doing in the next 2 days. For the newsletter goes out on Sunday. That's a very collaborative AI and me effort, and then Andy comes over the top of that with all of Andy's editing, right? So it's got multiple passes. Definitely has human in the loop. That's one of the things I'm looking for right away, and I'll just tell anybody that's looking for a little tip or a trick here: put it in your system instructions. Ask for it to use active verbs over passive verbs. I won't say it immediately eliminates the problem, but it reduces it quite a bit. And honestly, the writing is better. You should be trying to write with active verbs. I would get dinged on it. I had to write over my 2-year master's degree. I had to write just shy of 100 professional essays. That was we didn't have tests. We wrote essays, and so that's what I had to do. And you use whatever tools you had at the time. I think it's a good thing. It's good to force people into better levels of communication, and circling all the way back to lib arts and different ways of communicating, or even taskmasters. Not taskmasters. I'm sorry. Toastmasters. Yeah. Toastmasters. Taskmasters is a UK show, right? Toastmaster.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah. Yes. Also, maybe be better at task. Go on Taskmaster. Maybe I'm saying both. But Toastmasters is what I meant, or your local organizations where you have an opportunity to just get up and speak publicly. It's going to impact your ability to work with AI for years to come. I believe that so deeply. Okay, Beth, news.
So,
what you got?
Yeah, I have kind of weave off that. This is a giant stretch weave, but your ability to talk to people doesn't matter if you have not followed the rules, because Colossus, the EPA, Colossus is XAI's colossal data center. And the EPA official ruling is that XAI was found to be operating methane gas generators in its Memphis area colossal data center without the necessary air quality permits, violating federal law. XAI thought that they could get away with it if they were just temporarily installed, but the EPA has closed that loophole. You still need to follow all of the regulation. So, excuse me. This is EPA clarifying that, so that these turbines now fall under the standard permitting rules, and this has been a concern all along. So the NAACP and Southern Environmental Law Center have been highlighting risks, nitric oxide emissions linked to cancer and respiratory issues. So this is a little bit of I feel like a bellwether for, like, data centers are going to try all kinds of things to come online, right? And this seemed like, this one isn't going to work. I want to
add a little context to this. The data center build out it would, if it didn't bring its own energy to the data center operation, it would end up driving a demand hugely in the local region where the grid is operating. So if they put a big system into the Nashville area, that would have really big impacts on the demand on the grid in that area. So what they're needing to do is they have to put their own generation capacity at the data center because of the huge energy requirements to operate the data center chips. And cooling and all the other attendant processes that are in a data center. So people are thinking long term about having small modular nuclear reactors to supply that local energy generation for a data center. But right now, the fastest way to do that is to put in a gas generator system. And these are massive ones, but these have polluting, side effects. And so this is why, this is, I'm very interested that we actually have an EPA still, and that they're actually taking an action against Elon Musk. Hence, Jeff's comment about, Elon needs to buy some more government to avoid that.
I'd be interested to see too what is this just a news blip? Is there some fallout? Is there actual fines that are actually going to be paid? Is this a do it and ask for forgiveness later type of thing? Did X know exactly what they were doing? Or, let's benefit of the doubt, did they actually think they were in the right because it was temporary and they didn't think it was going to be an issue? Also, my concern here is who else is part of this conversation? And this would be for any city, not just the government of Memphis, right? Somebody has approved these data centers to be built where they are, and I am sure, like a lot of trade-offs, it's going to bring jobs. It might be good for the economy, not necessarily good for the environment. So you also wonder, like, what local governments and what kind of concessions are they giving to any of them? I don't just mean, I'm not picking on Elon, any of them, to build the data centers they are. And then is it a bit of, well, we told them what they needed to do, but it does seems like they're not. In other words, is there some culpability of like the Memphis government to this?
Elon bought the land.
Sure.
I don't, and I would expect that that this kind of knowledge is very in the bubble kind of knowledge. I don't think he told them that they were going to power by gas turbines. They also, what?
You would think he'd have to. I don't know. I don't know the rules. I don't know the laws. I'm just talking out the top of my head, but it would seem like you would have to do that.
Why would you not put solar panels all over the place, right? Like, I mean, we could pollute the crap out of something, or we could go with something that doesn't pollute the crap out of something. Yeah. I don't know, but I do think that that you said, do we do it and ask for apologize later? Don't ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness.
I can't remember what the saying is, but
it's ask forgiveness, not permission.
There you go.
Like, if you increase the carbon and pollution in the air, that's not like a ask for forgiveness kind of thing. That's like you destroyed the pool, right? It's not like, oh, we'll drain it, we'll put more in. Like, but it's there now. That it feels like not the same kind of thing.
Yeah. And look, this is not, I know this is an Elon story and an X story and Colossus, but probably you could find similar stories from Meta and OpenAI and any of the other ones too. And honestly, we don't really hear, do you guys hear as much about Anthropic's data centers, their build outs of data centers? I don't as much.
Well, because up to this point, they haven't been pursuing the build out of their own data centers, but it's only very recently in the last month or so that we saw the announcements about their purchase, their intent in their new sort of forward looking plans to actually own the chips and own the data centers that are operating.
They've been renting them essentially.
So before that, they were just buying cloud-based AI compute in order to deliver their services.
Yeah. And just to also clarify, I don't think data centers bring a ton of jobs. It's not like a manufacturing of something else, right? So like it is coming in the neighborhood.
You're right. There's a big construction project that creates jobs locally, but then when that's done, there are a bunch of full-time positions that are in electrical and facilities maintenance and all of that. But there are not a lot of human operators inside a data center.
Right.
We're still early on in this. I mean, hell, we're only really 3 years into seeing these big data centers, the need for them and such. So it's probably still honestly too early to really have a great view of this, but it will be interesting in 5 years to look back and look at reports of like the actual impact of these data centers, from economy to environment to helping AI, to whether they were built and then almost immediately out of date for a variety of reasons. The chips were wrong. The NVIDIA comes out with the next gen whatever's, and it only needs half the running machines to do the same thing that twice as big data center. I don't have the answer to any of this, but I'm curious how this will all play out in the not long run, the medium run, next 5 years ish.
And what we're not talking about is data center for training versus data center for inference. And inference has a little bit of a longer lifespan potentially because you don't need as much. But yeah.
Well, so I have a news story that Jyunmi would really like to hear, and I hope he's listening. So Jyunmi, this story is for you. The makers and the kit builders out there are interested in a platform called Raspberry Pi, which is a very small board that has, all the kind of key components you need for a computing system. And they've just launched a new add-on board that's capable of running generative AI models. So you have to have a Raspberry Pi 5, which is kind of their top end Raspberry Pi system. And this is not $1,000 item. It's like in the hundreds of dollars to buy a Raspberry Pi. So this it's called the AI Hat. It's $130, or AI Hat 2. Sorry, they had earlier an AI Hat that goes on top of the Raspberry Pi board and adds RAM and a high speed processing chip to do this AI stuff. So it's upgraded. It's only $130. And it's 8 gigabytes of RAM and a high-low 10H chip with 40 TOPS of performance. So now you can run local AI models in the altogether probably put your budget around $500 to run AI models off your Raspberry Pi.
And I'll say, if anybody knows of like a YouTube channel that is building stuff with Raspberry Pi, send me that link. I want to watch a YouTube channel where people are just building cool stuff. I'm sure there already is a Tinker type channels for Raspberry Pi, so obviously that exists, but even more so, this new like AI stuff. I want to see what people are building. Honestly, I want to see what kind of cool home systems they're building. What like really just people get super innovative with this, especially now that you have onboard 8 gigabytes of RAM and you can run localized at the edge AI. And so, I want to know what people are building. I don't have the time to build it, but I want to know what other people are building. So I can watch.
Sure there are communities out there. I'm not a member of it, but there's communities of Raspberry Pi builders, and they'll tell you which are the models that work well on the Raspberry Pi AI Hat 1. And now the AI Hat 2 probably broadens the range of available, downloadable, fully capable open source AI models that run on like an 8 billion parameter kind of model.
And the AI Hat is like a hat. It sits on top of the Raspberry Pi.
In the image you can see like there's the Raspberry Pi board, and then this other one sits on top of it.
And you can get a Raspberry Pi board. Gareth is just talking about. You can get a 16 gigabytes of RAM Raspberry Pi 5 board for $160. So Andy's like money is on point.
I didn't see the 60. I only saw that the 8 gigabyte had just come out. I think he's asking,
can I get AI Hat? But I think you can get 16 gigs on the board below. I'm not sure how those work together, but
I'm thinking you put the hat on. But I have not. This is me playing around reading stuff. I have not done Raspberry Pi stuff.
It was great. Greg says, we're building onboard AI LLMs, but not my department. I heard mention of some berry thing. I thought it was an ice cream or something. And then Jude says, extra raspberry for me. Yeah, this is exactly where I want to be. I love building things. I love tinkering and stuff, but here's exactly what I'm looking for. So if anybody finds this YouTube channel and is like, Brian, this obviously exists, you're just not watching it, send me the YouTube channel. I want to follow along. I want to watch somebody who's like, come along with me. I'll show you the steps of how I just did this, like, I just connected it to my outdoor porch lights, and now it does this really cool thing. Watch me walk outside and talk to my lights. It's like, I know you could do that with Amazon. I want to see somebody do that with Raspberry in a really cool way, Raspberry Pi in a really cool way. So anyway, if anybody has suggestions, I'm open to it. I do have a quick news story here, but quick. Microsoft pays for enterprise Wikipedia access as Wikimedia Foundation secures new revenue sources. They are not the only ones. Several other big players have also done this. Microsoft, Meta, Amazon are paying up for enterprise access to Wikipedia. What does that mean? Well, I can't get too deep into it because the Verge article just blocked me. But what I had seen earlier is essentially that it's basically getting proprietary or enterprise level resources to, well, a Wikipedia page that has all those links and all those other resources on it. I really, really love this. Wikipedia has now been around 25 years. I think they're just or about to celebrate their 25th anniversary. And like anything you do with nonprofits, if you donate once, you will forever get emails about donating again. And at some point a couple of years ago, whatever email came across to me just spoke to me. Maybe I was using Wikipedia a lot at the time, and I donated whatever it was. There, it's like sort of like just $2 will really, really help, right? And I want Wikipedia to succeed because I think it's so valuable, and it's interesting to watch the whole arc way back from when I was in, college, I guess, because, Wikipedia was like, oh my God, that was like the curse. Don't you dare say you looked at Wikipedia. Even if you said to a professor, I started at Wikipedia, I looked at the resources, and now I'm using the resources. At least when I was in college at UGA, they were like, wait, hold on, never mind everything else you said. Did you say you started on Wikipedia? As if you had quoted the front page of it, And now that's not the case, obviously. You still obviously have to be careful, but Wikipedia has come a long way. It's grown up quite a bit. And so I'm always excited about seeing these kind of stories, which is great. Pay into the enterprise, help out the Wikimedia Foundation. If that means that Wikipedia and all that, probably thousands of volunteers that put in time and effort to keep those pages up to date, if that means they can all continue doing what they need to do, full support of that. So anyway, I felt like maybe there's more to it. Maybe I can't read all of it. I don't know. It kind of feels like a feel-good story to me, so I liked it.
That's good.
Karl, any news from your neck of the woods you want to talk about?
You guys talked about Cerebrus, right?
No, not today yet. That's one of my list, but go for it.
Oh yeah. So I think it's a $10 billion deal, OpenAI deal worth with Cerebrus. So Cerebrus plans to deliver 750 megawatts of computing power to OpenAI through to 2028. So one, the deal will help diversify Cerebrus away from the United Arab Emirates, which account for 87% of revenue in the first half of 2024. So it's interesting because that, like, the whole point of this is, as Matt Berman said, it'll be faster. Like, essentially, ChatGPT will be faster, or OpenAI just in general, the products could be faster. Just because I think, isn't Cerebrus even better? And you may know more about this, Andy, than I do. Like, better than TPUs. Like,
Jeff is agreeing.
With how whatever the processor is. So hence, with NVIDIA buying Grok, then OpenAI getting Cerebrus, and isn't, like, it is a rival to Grok, right? So and
it's on a different scale entirely. Like, Grok has a special language processing unit, so the architecture is different. What Cerebrus has is a thing called wafer scale computing, and so what they do is they package into their system, a very large format, set of chips. I mean, and so I don't know the technology behind it exactly, but this approach to wafer scale as opposed to chip scale means that they're working with a very much larger silicon die. And as a result of that, the inference processing or pre-training compute processing is dramatically faster than would be happening with the interaction among multiple GPUs, which is the way the other systems work. LPU from Grok is a different design. GPUs weren't originally designed to do AI computation. LPUs were, and so Grok is faster than a GPU in that context. Cerebrus goes another step beyond that in a new design called wafer design, and that is really powerful. They've been a darling among, the sort of early stage investors in, the in AI compute capacity race, if you will. And then, as you mentioned, the United Arab Emirates has kind of built their data centers around that technology. And so they have very high speed processing.
So I think in the news release, it's like Cerebras news release, it's like up to 15 times faster than GPU-based systems, which OpenAI definitely needs in terms of like just inference style. Like as we've heard before, they can't release any products because you just don't have enough compute. Well, data centers plus this, could we see more stuff that they can release now they have this capability?
And this allows for more efficient training to still benefit, right? Like this isn't like if you just get more efficient at it, now you've just like increased the benefit like by whatever times 5 or whatever it is.
So
I have another advancement in AI intelligence, let's say.
Sure.
And that is one of our favorite little companies, the Japanese startup Sakana. So Sakana just accomplished a very impressive thing, which is they have a coding agent called ALE agent, and they secured first place in the AtCoder heuristic contest, which is a complex coding competition that involves optimization problems that take a long cycle reasoning process in order to achieve the final result. And this is a more difficult benchmark or test to evaluate the capabilities of such an AI system, much more than, say, human eval, which mostly tests the ability to write isolated functions as opposed to actually solving a real world optimization problem. And so the import of this is that, once again, Sakana has found a way, not with newer chips or bigger investment, but with cleverness. They've figured out a way to win one of these competitions and surpass all the other players. And we started talking about Sakana in 2023 because of their evolutionary model merge approach to the development of AI large language models, where they would just, create a kind of a survival of the fittest contest among model designs. And then the ones that would win would come out, and they designed that through the merge process, which doesn't require fine-tuning training even. It's just you take the weights of two different models and you combine them together, and that is the new model distribution in the parameter network of the deep neural network. And that gives you, without a whole bunch of training cost, a new model. And so they kind of evolved this model to the point where they were able to produce models that would win competitions, but without any other sort of huge investment in pre-training. So anyway, they've done this new thing, and it has a special import to the emergence of a method for simulating enterprise processes, complex enterprise processes. You imagine a manufacturing process, simulating that and optimizing it, doing the math that's necessary and reasoning to optimize that process. And when they did this to win this heuristic contest, they did this over a course of 4 hours of continuous reasoning, and it cost several $1,000s of calls to GPT 5.2 and Gemini and so on. But this is their model, is to kind of leverage the existing ones to accomplish something that's at the state of the art. And so go Sakana. We love Sakana. This is a small Japanese company that keeps surprising us with new wins.
Always. Their stuff is always fascinating to me.
Yeah, they keep and part of what's so exciting is what they do in efficiency, right? I thought you were going to talk about Drope introducing DROPE with the capitals and lower cases, it extends the context of pre-trained LLMs by dropping their positional embeddings. So we've talked about the neural map that happens. Andy, it's a graph. It's a neural map graph thingy that gets created when models get trained, and part of it is how they are in position to other tokens, right? Like that's what happens. They discovered that if you after you do that, if you drop the positional embeddings and do a tiny retrain, it increases the context window, or it increases the context that it can hold, because apparently regular models are trained with 4,000 token contexts. And so when you get over that, that's tricky, because now it's different pieces for them, and this can give them more capacity. That is what I understand of this, which is that is the maximum that I understand about this. But
I followed you. I got it. I think that all will go back to about, like, you know, when he comes back to memory or any of these stories, you know, just going back to how memory will be used, and not even memory, but like just in time memory being, you know, emphasized and having a bias versus stuff that's perhaps older. I was talking to a client about that the other day and explaining how, you know, that's all sort of playing out. I'm going to name a news story real quick, but actually I think we'll just leave it for Monday, because I think it should have more time. And that's Anthropic released their most recent economic index. And we've seen this before. I always find them super fascinating. Their summary article at anthropic.com/research is already a longer read. So I think I'll just put a pin in that one and say, let's circle back to it, because it's a good report as always. There's always some really interesting insights about how people are using, well, Claude in their case, but in this case, it was all 4.5. So that's new. And what has changed from the last time they ran the report, which is really interesting. Like, what's different? What kind of indicators are they finding? Plus, they've decided to add a few extra, let's call it bells and whistles, in terms of what they're tracking. And then they're really open and honest, as we usually see with Anthropic, because they are a research facility. If you think of them in that way, they were like, look, this is the truth of it. This is where there's some holes in this. Sure, we may not have captured everything. And also, this is what we're going to keep tracking because we think it's important. So I find it really interesting. So you can go look at the Anthropic Economic Index if you're into that kind of thing. But I think maybe we'll leave that for Monday. What I was going to talk about is something I mentioned yesterday, and I just don't want to get too deep into the show because, Beth, I know you said you had something to share too. And mine's not a particularly long conversation, but it's also just not news. It's just like me using AI. And I don't know, I think it's important for us all. We've all sort of been talking about, how we independently use AI. And of course, Cloud Code has come up quite a bit this week, which I did use for the first time last night, like first time ever I used Cloud Code. So it's certainly part of my life right now. But what I wanted to talk about is the process that I was going through. And I just want to explain it really quickly because I think there's some lessons here. And as we were saying yesterday, and Andy was reemphasizing, these are hard lessons. They still hurt a bit, but at the same time, there's a lot of learning that comes out of it. And so for me, I've been sort of casually working on this project for a while, had some ideas about how I wanted to be able to dissect transcripts, these kind of shows, literally this show, as an example, this is episode 640. So that's 640 hours. Let's be honest. I mean, some of those are 30-minute episodes. Most are not. So that's quite a bit of content. And so, yes, there already obviously many solutions on how to dissect that data, but I really wanted to start thinking about it from another level. Anyway, so as you do, as Andy has taught us, and, I learned from Andy, you need a PRD, a project requirement document, which, by the way, Cloud Code is all about. So that's funny how it sort of just reinforces what you'd already said, Andy. And that's the way it works. But, in my process, I really tried my best to think through this process and started building in Lovable, actually demoed it here on the show, was showing you the search capabilities, and it was functional. It was. But I had this sneaking suspicion that something was being lost in the build process. And so that starts to become painful because now you're starting to use like credits and things that you'd rather not be using to basically circle back and go, wait, hold on, what happened? And this team right here, as well as Jyunmi, who's not on, but correctly recommended, getting a Git set up on GitHub, which helps with tracking and things like that. But also that doesn't exactly tell you in plain language exactly what's going on. And I found myself in a position, well, this week really, because I've been part of my sort of, I don't know, call it a New Year's resolution, but just call it this week type of thing. I've really just been trying to sit down with attention to vibe code, like intentional vibe coding, let's call it. And it goes where it goes, and I don't have a time limit on it, but I'm doing it every single night as opposed to watching another TV show or something like that. So in that process, it sort of became clear to me that two things. One, I had somehow lost visibility, let's say, on exactly what Lovable was doing, despite the fact that I was there for every single prompt and using Gemini quite a bit through the process to explain it to me about how I wanted to go through, and I would give it my ideas and Gemini would come back, and then ultimately I would have Gemini write me Lovable prompts. And you would think, look, man, you were there for the whole thing. How do you not know what's going on? And that's kind of what I just want to share, is that like, I felt like I was missing some of the key components of my own build. Now, I'm not blaming Lovable for that or whatever, but I think what it goes back to is a couple of things here. One, I didn't do as much due diligence. This is going to be the third time this has probably happened to me where I thought, I needed to spend longer on the PRD, let's say, or just the outline, let's call it, of what it is that you're trying to do. And once again this week, I uncovered that perhaps there was a few more ways that I needed to be looking at this. And what that ended up doing was affecting how things went into Superbase and also perhaps S3 now and some other areas. And I don't need to get into specifics of the build. We'll get there. But I think it's just a bigger conversation that I just wanted to share with people about, my trials and tribulations. Everybody else that's working in AI, I'm sure feels this way too. I don't think I'm unique in any way. But taking pause, taking steps, every so many steps, and going, do I still understand if I'm using a vibe coding platform, which one you might be using? Do I still understand what's going on? Do I understand what the process is? Has there perhaps been some creep in here? And, Lovable's rewriting the code and rewriting the code. Well, that starts to become a house of cards a bit because, what it's working, it fixed the problem. The error is resolved, but is it cohesively a full code? Like, is all the code still working together, or is it literally just whack-a-mole? And that's what was starting to happen. I would literally fix one problem only to find something that was already solved, such as the embedding of the MP4 break. And I was like, we're going backwards. It was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That was almost all the last 2 weeks. So anyway, that lesson learned there. And also the lesson is, I kind of need to start over. Now, I'm not actually starting from zero. It's not like I'm throwing away everything I've learned up to this point. It's actually just a more refined process now. I know what I've learned. I'm now taking that and I'm slowing down. I'm going back to the beginning and going, this is the overarching goal. This is what the beginning looks like, and this is what the end looks like. And I will do my best to fill you in, and I will share the GitHub, and I will share the Git, and I will share what has built in Lovable. Andy's been helping with me with that this week, and trying to just really dissect what has happened previously, where that's probably not going to fork and go the right direction for me, and how to reset and do this the right way. And, in my case, at least, I feel like the right move here is to not continue to try to build in the Superbase database that I've already created, but just to learn from what was done and start with a fresh database with the right tables in it. Because, you get into data issues and how many times did you run that through? And even though I was watching the error logs and everything else. So it's not that I have some like go out and do this or whatever. That's not really what this was about. This was just, I just wanted to share that experience more so like that people can hear that that's like what's going on. And if you felt that way, then, hey, I'm right there with you. And, look, I loaded Claude. I watched Karl talk about how to do Claude Code, and I really struggled to get Claude Code loaded yet I was doing it on my other laptop, admittedly, but I had bash issues I don't know. I kind of know what a bash.exe is, but I had to look that up and figure that out and get it on the computer. And then, I'm doing the putting it in the coder. And honestly, you know what I ended up doing? I unloaded and then I couldn't get it. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to connect to my API billable for API because I wasn't going through the subscription. I just wanted to bill me straight through API. And despite Anthropic in Claude Code telling me everything was hunky dory, it just never would take. And then it would say, you need to log in. And I was like, I'm over this. So what did I do? I downloaded the Claude desktop and I was using Claude Code in minutes. And I thought, well, see, that's why these things exist, because I was going around and around and around last night, sitting on the couch, trying to get it to work exactly right as the editor, in more of the raw fashion. And I fully aware that I am losing some function of features by going to the desktop version of it. But you know what? Sometimes movement forward is still movement forward. And that's more valuable than having every single bell and whistle. And that's where I ended up last night. I thought, you know what? I probably won't be able to load Ralph. And I probably won't be able to do maybe these 3 other things that I want to do. But damn it, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to take a step in the right direction. And that's ultimately what I did. By the way, here's something really cool too, kind of a Claude Code thing, and I'll finish on this. Don't be afraid to use like a Gemini or a ChatGPT or whatever, because here's the thing. I had Claude Code. I shared this with Andy, I think, but I was saying like Gemini, I said, help me start this in Claude Code. And so he gave me this really long thing. It's like, this is what this MD file was. This is file 1. This is file 2. This is file 3. Here are the skills that need to be created, whatever. But Gemini gave it to me as one big old, chat window. What I did last night is I literally gave that to Claude Code and said, do this for me. It created all the files. It created all the skills. It created 6 sub-agents in there. All I did was give it what Gemini said. Hey, this is what you should tell Claude Code to do. But Gemini was saying, go create this file first, then do this file, then give it this prompt. Instead of that, I literally gave the entire thing to Claude Code and said, you should follow it in this order. And it's like, yeah, got you. And it just created all the local files for me and everything else.
And I want to use that as an example for why there should be no despair about starting over. Because once you refine your PRD, the product requirements that you want to have built now with the assistance of Claude, and it's going to write the PRD for you. Now you just give it to it and say, can now build this. And it can do that in a few hours.
Yeah.
So all the weeks that you spent building it in Lovable, those collapse to Claude building it in a few hours. Now, it doesn't have the automatic connections to all the different external requirements for deployment, etc. But it'll give you explicit instructions on how to do that in a very simple way.
And it is. It's in the PRD. Yeah, it's like, look, you're going to need an S. I haven't previously worked with an S3 bucket. I've certainly made S3 buckets in the past with Amazon. And it came up that I told you guys this, but I'll just tell anybody listening that it's going to be significantly cheaper for me to put a 720 or a 1080p video cost-wise in an S3 bucket versus Supabase. And so I want to keep those two things separate. That makes sense to me. And so there's a good example of that, Andy. I had not previously on Lovable. I'd only dealt with Supabase and all the proxy information. But in this case, I need to work with like big old files that are probably 500 megabytes a piece.
And that reinforces this notion that you must keep in mind, which is that Lovable is great for doing something that's contained, right? It can deploy something immediately, and it's going to be at the more along the lines of an MVP or personal application level. But what you're designing and building is a production grade working application for a very large audience.
Yes.
That's what you want. And so you're going to have a different architecture than Lovable will automatically provide to you. Yeah. And that's what Claude Code's going to tell you about. And now you're going to be much further down the path towards a production ready system.
I hope so. That's the goal. I don't know. Obviously, I haven't played with Claude Code enough. Andy, Beth, that you guys are also working on. Jyunmi's been helping with it as well. Obviously, we're leaning on Karl. So it is sort of like a group effort, although I've been sort of primarily leading at this point. But the goal, as Jyunmi was actually pointing out in the Slack channel, like, well, how do you get several hands in the cookie jar all helping with this, because there's different people that want to help, without stepping on everybody's toes, right? That's poor. Cookie jar toes, that didn't really work. But you know what I mean? How do you get a whole bunch of people on the dance floor without stepping on everybody's toes? With that?
Don't put your toes in the cookie jar.
There you go. Yeah, that totally works. My analogy sits. Don't put so many. How do you put so many people on the dance floor without stepping on toes? Right there. You go.
So Karl, do you have an overview comment? You have an overview comment on that? This whole sort of vibe coding process that we've been discussing over the last 10 minutes.
Yes and yes. So the first thing I would do is I'd be like, if a vibe code doesn't work for me though, I'll just switch back to regular coding. Gotta be like, nah, stupid. Okay. But what you could do, so I found this post, and it's from somebody who says how we vibe code at a FANG. So it's like, one is you get your PRD, but you actually have what's called a TDD, like a technical design doc. So a technical design doc is like, PRD is what? Technical design doc is like essentially how, like what are the things, the tools you are going to be using, right? Architectures and whatnot, which is really it's essentially what you submit to like if you're a junior engineer, you submit it to a senior engineer and they go through it. So it's interesting what they said, if you pass the review, you can now launch the development effort, right? Now there is they have what's called test-driven development. And this is where AI has been a force multiplier. So I have AI, a coding agent, write the tests first for the feature I'm going to build. Only then do I start using the agent to build out the feature. So essentially, you have your whatever you're using to test the features. You're essentially having AI build the test to test the feature that you're eventually gonna.
So it comprehends what its validation has to be, and that helps it design the thing to pass the validation. Yeah.
So it's not about. So I copied that post into the YT video project. So it's not bad to be maybe as you're doing this, you say, hey, I want to use a test-driven development process.
It's perfect timing for it, actually. Yeah, because I've been consolidating literally my next move here on this is just openly sharing on what's going on. Like I basically gave it everything that I previously been doing. Then I rolled in what Gemini was suggesting, and Claude Code was like, yeah, that's better. And then it created the document. So like, this is even better. Well, Andy had done a Claude Code on his own review of the previous process and sort of breaking down the highs and lows of it. And so again, like kind of your point, Karl, like I'm going to take Andy's document and I'm going to feed that in before there's any full approval, before I give it an API key, before I go to S3, before I'm going to give it Andy's document. And I think, Karl, you just gave me another one to do, which is like, help me build a TD and let's figure out, like, let's really get down to it. And to like the nuts and bolts of this, because the more specificity I can give to Claude about what the Claude Code that I'm ultimately trying to build, the less chances there are for either it coming up with its own solutions in the middle, which sometimes happens, or just simply creep off the main focus of what we're trying to ultimately build. And this whole thing it's all a lesson learned on how to work with AI. This is exactly what all of us are going to be doing for quite some time. If you're working and you're not close to, retirement, or if you are and you're still working on this and, having fun with it, it's learning how to work basically with agents and sub-agents and these kind of tasks. And there's a lot to be learned here. I'm learning every day and I'm failing, but it's fun to see this, and I'm curious to see how far this can go. And I think you're right. Probably develop something faster than where I was.
Yeah, and what comes out of the end of that pipeline is something that's going to be easy to use and accessible to lots of people, and it produces something that is an application that may find a large audience of, really raving fan customers. And that's true for anybody who wants to do a vibe coding project. If you want to build something, you have an idea for something. This is what's really happening in large scale is lots of people, millions of people are using platforms like Lovable and Replit to build something that they just use for themselves, or they, release to their family, or to their family and friends, or to a community that they belong to. And that application, if it gets enough adoption, can be something that actually advances the usability and the utility of systems like AI.
Yeah.
Right.
So
there's no way to get to your third app without going through your first two.
There you go. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. As I have found out writing this major musical that I'm writing, and now that I have that theater hat on, Beth, I'm all in. You have to have the moments of despair, and how will he pull out of this one? And then you go, aha, to the third act we go. So for the 11th hour,
And there's a quote, and then Karl, I want to know what you're saying. I thought it was Henry Ford, but it wasn't. It was Thomas J. Watson Jr., the CEO of IBM. Right. Recently, I was asked if I was going to fire an employee who made a mistake that cost the company $600,000. No, I just spent $600,000 training him. Right. So all that you've gone through is a part of increasing your value to yourself, but also to everybody who gets value.
And I just learned that there's somebody at IBM named Watson.
This is a while ago, so probably.
Yeah, but still, I just assumed their Watson was named. Maybe it had something to do. I just thought Watson was Watson. My dear Watson. So that's an eye opener. I didn't know that.
Karl.
Well, we are. See, this is why I shouldn't have gone first, Beth, because I said it was going to be short and then it wasn't. I hope it was a good conversation. But are you here on Monday?
I am. We can talk about it next week. Mine is not time intensive, but Karl, you were going to say something right before I did the last one.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the vibe code piece, one of the people that he's a lawyer out in Singapore, and he actually personally just reached out to Manus, and he said now Manus is sponsoring credits for the legal community, and he just set up a online vibe code for legal apps. I thought it was really cool. And then so it has to be legal tech related, and if whoever wins gets a month of Manus for free. And so it's pretty much open. I thought that's a really neat idea. So I don't know, something to think about for the Daily AI Show community. If you want to reach out to Manus or to GenSpark or whoever, and then see if you can set one up. Just sort of it's just a neat thing for the community to do together.
Hey, before we close, I have a question for Karl, which is, I know that Karl sitting at that desk, which I've seen you sitting at before, your vibe coding applications that work for the clients, the long list of clients that you guys have developed in 0 to 60. And at the same time, I know you have an engineering team that's working with you. Mm-hmm. What's over the course of the last couple of years, what's the ratio of things that you can actually produce using vibe coding skills, or as compared to when you had to turn things over to the engineering team that you have to finalize the product? So do you get the question?
Yeah, I do. So as the years have progressed, essentially it went from try vibe coding for personal to, you want to build production grade for the company? This is what I would recommend. I want you to vibe code it for, say, 80% of it. You figure it out and you finish it with us. We'll finish, an actual dev will finish this, make sure, any debug, make sure the integrations work, your database. And that's the quote now, right? It's this is how much it's going to cost to finish. And this is what we recommend for everybody. So anybody who comes up to us and say, hey, yeah, about this app, I was like, what you do? You get what's your favorite large language model using, whatever it is. So go for a 20-minute walk, have a conversation, get yourself a PRD. What's a PRD? Doesn't matter. It's a product requirements doc. Just say it. I want to build this app. Help me build a product requirements doc. Ask me one question at a time until you can build this for me. Take that. Now take it to your favorite model, whatever it is. Have it build it. It depends on the client. Usually I'm like Replit or Lovable or go to Claude. I'm not sure. Depends. Have them build it. Have them do all the, we'll give them like Dribble, like some sites to get updates with. Get them to just get an MVP going, because that actually saves us all the back and forth. If you were to build whatever at the beginning, that's such a long mess. And even companies that ask us about websites, I was like, you know what? You can do this. Don't I want you to do this because 1, you're practicing, and 2, it makes more sense rather than we're going to start from scratch, because I don't want to get into that game. I want to get into our business is something else. It's not app development. And so that's how it's progressed. I'm very curious over the next year how much further and further, because most people don't know that you can actually do this. Like all this stuff that we talk about, they're like, I didn't know we could do that. It's like, yeah, you can. So that's why that's the recommendation. PRD, go build your thing. Go think about it. It's mostly front end design anyway. Then we come in back end design, database, depending on the app.
So
I'll say
Does that answer your question, Eddie?
Yeah, that clarifies it. And that was different than I expected. I thought we were going to get an answer which was just, now, I actually personally, Karl, can deliver some of the product without actually having to delegate it to the development team. I can do that. But
no, I want them
to do a totally different thing. You're saying now I give the client an assignment that gets us to the point where now our dev team then finalizes and production qualifies the solution.
It's so good.
Because that's the whole point, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Based on what you said earlier in the show, would you also go for a TDD?
So this is where the client, because the TDD would be like React, Next.js, and they'd be like, I don't know what this means. So I'm like, at this moment, you don't need to do that, right? Why don't you just, it's really, because if you think about it, a lot of people want to see it work.
Yeah.
They don't care about, as my business partner always says, how the sausage is made. I'm like, can you just switch it? But they don't want to see that. They just want to see this thing work. And so it's like, you can totally make it work. It's like, and what if I wanted to look like this? Screenshot it and tell it to make it work. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And how Lovable and Replit has a chat plan mode. I was like, you just plan it. You have your PRD, which you went for a walk. Again, very simple concept. Now you can copy and paste. I say, hey, create me a PRD for Replit, create me a PRD for Lovable, copy and paste that. You've got your working copy. You put your brand, whatever it is. And okay, now we can talk about, like, it's sort of a learning and a dev all at the same time, because then usually people like, this is what I found out. I didn't know I could do this. So it's like one after the other. After I was like, oh, okay, good. Now we're shifting the way you think. And then it's like, okay, now I always recommend, it's like, can I produce this? Like, yeah, you can. But if I look at the code right now, that's not scalable and that's probably not reliable. So you still want a professional to scale how you want to scale it.
Yeah. Corbin Brown talks about that a lot on YouTube as far as like what production ready looks like versus some of the vibe coding things. And he's not knocking on one or the other, but he has more of that dev background. He talks about that a lot. I think it's a good heated warning. It's just like, careful. Like if it's something you're just going to use in 3 of your friends, that's one thing. If this is something that thousands or hundreds of thousands of people need to touch, careful what you're doing.
And like people don't know about like just the simple security aspect of a rate limits, right? So you're like, you have to have a rate limit because you don't want to get a like a spam attack and so many things, right? But most people won't even think about that. So these are the things. And even if people put, I want you to secure my app, it's like, what does that mean? So it's like, there are things that developers still need to ensure your site does. There's still some questions, but what makes it easy is like, hey, you have a PRD, thank you, pass it on. So we don't have to ask as many questions. You've given us an MVP, and it's like there are some little other questions, but you have an idea. I took your idea from your head and put it into a working complex. Now we can finish it. And I feel like that finishing aspect is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller as Daryamide said, most of this is being written by code. All these things are just going to be incorporated in. So that's cool though, but people who are doing this have learning experiences. So Brian, I don't know if you do this, but like, do you have your Claude rules? So your MD file, have you updated that? And the second thing is in your, if you want to learn while you're vibe coding, I recommend in either your MD file or like very specific to say, hey, can every single time you build a feature you add, can you explain to me what you actually did? So as you're seeing it go through, you're learning. And as you're learning, you're like, oh, that's why that happens. Right. So you're like, oh, I'm learning kind of how, not to code, but about the code as you're going through this. You might as well learn it while it's going through and you're sitting there, right? So
I would imagine you could also take that and keep updating one of the files as well, right? With the learnings. So the file just gets bigger and bigger, but it's literally all your key learnings.
Yeah.
And then you could use that you could take that directly into any of the learning specialties of like ChatGPT or Gemini, where you could do the learn and do more of the back and forth as a teacher. You could literally use that as like sort of your, well, it wouldn't be the taxonomy, but it would sort of be your starting point for learning it. All right. Well, listen, let's wrap it up. It's been an amazing week. We had lots of conversations, everything from Andy holding down the fort on his own for 13 minutes on Wednesday to lots and lots of other conversations. Definitely a bit of an edge towards Claude Code, but that's because I think we all collectively believe it's a big enough deal.
One more nugget that I want to pass by.
Sure.
Now, everyone's vibe coding, especially if you go to Claude Code, one thing people miss, and you're going to have to search this out. See if you can develop sub-agents, because it'll make your work even faster. Like have an orchestrator. So you have a sub-agent to review whatever, like you'll find it somewhere. But if you can do that, and I know it's a little bit of work to get these agents to be built, but once you get that, I think not only you're learning to subcode, but I think the most important skill that all of us will need to have is like, how do I manage and orchestrate a series of agents for me? Yep. So as you're vibe coding, if you can, and I don't think Lovable can do this, but Claude Code can, build sub-agents and have your sub-agents do the task, be faster, but you're also learning how to use sub-agents to do your task.
Yeah, it's a great call out, great idea too. I'm learning along the way all the things I need to do as I start to delve into Claude Code over the weekend and stuff like that. I had to do it. All right, listen, we'll wrap it up. That is it for episode 640. And as Cisco says, yeah, Andy, the unbroken streak persists. And that's only because Andy was here to keep it going on Wednesday. We will do better with our internal communication, make sure that doesn't happen again. But yes, I am so grateful that the streak persists. So that's it for this week, guys. Come back all next week. I think we probably not maybe going to see you for a little bit, Karl. So, safe to-dos on wherever you're going to be and doing and stuff like that. But I know you have to take a break from the show, and we'll obviously catch back
in 2 weeks.
Back in 2 weeks. All right. Well, you'll have some of the rest of us back. So come back on Monday and hang out with us. Until then, have a wonderful weekend. And also, don't forget, hey, like and subscribe and do all those things, because that helps, whatever platform you're listening to us on. Also, don't forget that the next Conundrum episode will go out tomorrow on our podcast platforms. So you can go listen to that. That's super fun. And then on Sunday, we'll have the newsletter that'll go out as well. If you would like to subscribe to the newsletter, you just need to go to our website, thedailyAIshow.com. And there's a quick place there where you can subscribe to it. And of course, last but not least, the community, the Daily AI Show community.com, where we were just talking about today as having a place to put a whole bunch of YouTube channels that, are about AI or AI adjacent things. that will be in there, right? So come hang out in the community. There's a lot of resources that we don't get really a chance to share. And as Beth pointed out, sometimes the live comments disappear and reappear. Much, much easier to just make sure everything that we talk about goes into the community so people can find it whenever you happen to be listening to this show. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you on Monday. Bye.